They're redoing the theater like years ago. I mean, I'm a resident for 45 years. In the same house. Nurses used to have.
Yeah, I can go for you.
Okay, how are you?
Hi all.
Okay.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Matt.
I apologize. This table is for our group
Oh.
only. If you would mind, yeah.
No.
Thank you.
Hi, Rob.
Hey, how are you? Doing good.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you guys had a deluge, right? I saw some pictures. I was in Maine. It wasn't, we didn't get that until Monday. They marched in the rain. They're just party folk up there, let me tell you. At least it's there. There's Slickers or Grundens.
Hi, we have a forum, so let's just get started. Are we good? Okay. All right, welcome everyone. Board of Trustees, workshop meeting. It's Tuesday, May 26th, 2026. Can I get a motion to open the meeting? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Rosenberg, all in favor? It's 5 of us. I anticipate Deputy Mayor Galen and Trustee Rothrock to be here shortly. They do not intend to be absent.
There's a delay with the trains.
There we go. For the record, Deputy Mayor Galen has arrived at 6:31. All right, first topic on our agenda is the Wallgrove Drainage Project scope. Wallgrove has some issues with the roads, and underneath the roads is the drainage that needs repair. We have been working diligently with our engineers who are on the phone here too, to do telescoping to study all of the needs of the stormwater system. And so now we have good data to support what this project entails. We aim to apply for some grant funding, and so we are here today to talk about the scope of the project that we will be applying for the grant. Grants often look for green infrastructure elements that gets higher points. It's also probably good to just do. That's why it gets higher points. So part of what we need to figure out here is, or acknowledge, is that, you know, you could do this without doing any elements of green infrastructure in it, do like the bare minimum, or you can incorporate green infrastructure and to the best of how we are able to. And so Anthony here has put together all of this many page document for you to go through. I think the key is page 46 that has the cost, and it outlines what that cost goes to, but I'll let Anthony just guide us through the information and try and distill it in our 15 to 20 minute window that we have available here for this discussion. So over to you, Anthony.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I'll try to keep it quick and simple. I'll share my screen. As you mentioned, we completed the study. We sent that around. I don't know if everyone had a chance to get that or look at that yet, but the study itself did not include green infrastructure because it was really just looking at, you know, the drainage infrastructure under the road. So that's kind of an add-on, which we're working on adding into this document now so that it'll be compatible for the grant that Fiona is working on or going to be working on. So I'll give you like a real quick thing on the study. So we looked at a 260 acre watershed that, if you look at this map, the top of the map is Broadway, Ashford Avenue. The watershed includes Masters School, parts of Children's Village, Springhurst. That's all tributary to the drainage in Wallgrove. So we did a kind of a detailed look at the drainage piping. We had previously done TV work on all the drains in the village, so that helped. We surveyed the piping with a pretty detailed survey going all the way up Wall Grove, essentially. The idea was to upgrade that. I'm sorry, upgrade that piping within Wall Grove, do any repairs needed so that we could finally pave Wall Grove. I know you've been dying to do that for the last several years. This went all the way up to basically like Johnson Court, up to like the Springhurst School area. The whole system is kind of dependent on how it crosses Broadway and discharges out to the creek. If you could see my cursor down in here, there's this keeps popping up on me. This is kind of a good picture of the discharge there down at Broadway that leads into, really is like a southerly tributary to Wickers Creek. This is kind of a brick culvert structure, about 7 foot 2.5 inches high by about 4 feet wide, kind of an odd thing that was just kind of built into the wall. There's a pretty substantial retaining wall there. So the system is kind of dependent on that. That structure has got about a 10-year storm capacity. So that was kind of our cue to upgrade the system, what we were kind of designing to and looking at in the study. This is a map of kind of a proposed condition, if this makes any sense. Wall Grove is the yellow run here. You can see some segments that are in red. These would be segments of piping that we'd be replacing and upgrading in size to get the whole run on Wall Grove up to that 10-year storm capacity. Right now, the drain line has a limit of about a 2-year at best capacity.
Anthony, can you explain what that means for everyone? With
Sure.
10-year, 2-year capacity mean?
The 2 years about 3 inches, roughly 3 some odd inches of rain over a 24-hour period of rainfall distribution, kind of a standardized distribution that we use. The 10-year would be about a 5.5 inch rainfall. Okay, if you went all the way up to say a 100-year storm, that would be about an 8.9 inch rainfall in this area. So that kind of gives you the range there. You know, standard for municipal work is usually about a 10 or 25-year rain. We do try to go up to 100-year in certain, flood projects. We'll have that goal. But here, as I said, we're kind of limited to what's happening in Broadway. This would be a very expensive thing to upgrade, and we'd have to upgrade everything all the way up Wall Grove. We kept the analysis to, making that 10-year event. The other thing that did happen with this is we looked at extending the drain line further up Wall Grove where there's no drain infrastructure. I believe DPW was keen on this as well, because there's just 1 or 2 catch basins that kind of just discharge out to the woods into the stream. So that project, as a result of this study, we came up with a cost there. We were about 2.4 million. That would be to upgrade the piping, not all of the piping, but certain segments, and then extend the piping up Wall Grove, and then repave the entire street. This again did not include the green infrastructure aspect, which is coming into play now. Let me just go back to that map. So the one thing we looked at to add in green infrastructure, we had some discussions with Fiona Matthews and the mayor, and I think Matt Rosenberg was involved in that too, and the deputy mayor as well. We looked at the stream that runs behind and parallel to Wall Grove, which has severe erosion issues, which is essentially on the master's property. If you recall, let me just get a better shot of this. Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. Just gonna go here. We had, there was a tributary pipe that we just repaired that came off of Wall Grove that went through the Esterwood property up to a head wall on Masters. If you can see my cursor there, that pipe's been repaired, and we did stream bank stabilization for about the first 100 or so feet of the stream, about 100 feet. So what we looked at was continuing that further up the stream. And also, if you're familiar with the dead end of Esterwood and the path that comes off of Esterwood, this kind of serves in larger storms as a stream itself. It's badly eroded along the path. A lot of this is coming off of Masters School and off the end of Esterwood. And there's severe erosion that's existed there for years, as far as I know. So we looked at, and you can see it on this map, that's kind of this blue line, stabilizing that and inserting that into this project as a green infrastructure aspect. Let's see. All right, so this was kind of a work in progress, but we sketched up. You can see here the dead end of Esterwood, and this is the path. We would restore the path, install drainage along the path, pick up outfalls from Masters School. There's a pipe kind of hanging out in the middle of nowhere on the embankment there. There's drainage that comes off the end of Esterwood. There's severe erosion down at this end, at the southern end, that comes off of a pipe that comes off of Masters School. We would also stabilize the stream banks. This is the stream banks, the lower reaches, let's call it, the more southerly reaches, and plant along the stream banks here and really rework this whole corridor to fix that erosion. That, let's see, really rough estimate on that, we were about 700,000 added to the project. So overall, you'd be looking at a total project cost of somewhere around 3 million, 3.1 million, something like that. We would add that green infrastructure aspect into the report, add the costs in, and we would deliver that to Fiona to include as the feasibility study for the grant. And from our understanding, that would qualify it for that grant. And that's kind of the quick recap. Hope I didn't confuse you too much.
Anthony,
Does that mean the whole amount qualifies for the grant, or just the component that?
No, the whole grant, the whole project would qualify.
If
more
by adding this,
by adding-
$10,000
Yes.
storm,
And it makes you more eligible.
Yeah, the green infrastructure is the component that was missing, which makes it much more competitive.
Just, I'm sorry.
one more grant question.
Oh, yeah, good.
What is the possibility of the grant? Is it
Is Fiona on
50%
here?
funding or 50% match?
She is.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
So the green infrastructure is not required to apply to the grant, but it certainly increases the village's chances of getting funded. We're looking at two different grant rounds. We've been looking, the majority of the time, we've been looking at a grant called the Risk Implementation Round, which is a response to Westchester County's disaster from Hurricane Ida, to try and make the Westchester County more resilient to storms like Ida. The state has a strong preference for including green infrastructure, although I kind of like Anthony, I'm a bit taken aback by the cost of that. I think for the risk infrastructure grants, the grant can go up to $3 million and has no match. So it's a highly favorable grant. The chance of Dobbs Ferry getting the grant, I don't feel very confident, but I don't feel unconfident, only because the state intends to award only 4 such grants. They're going to be, the majority, all of them are going to be in Westchester County. So at least we're not competing against the entire state. But a lot of municipalities were affected by Ida. One of the scoring criteria for that particular grant is how impacted the village was by Ida. So I'd very much like to put together a chart of both public and hopefully private damage from Ida to give us a better chance. But when you ask how likely it is to get the grant, that's kind of a tricky one, only because of the number of grants.
Yeah, and does it matter that the areas of the village that were most severely impacted by Ida are not this particular corridor?
Does it matter? Yes, it matters a little bit. It doesn't matter enough not to apply for that amount of money, in my view. The grant application also, this particular grant application, the majority of the work is the feasibility study, which Anthony is doing anyway in order to give the village the information that it needs. So it's not a particularly expensive grant application to develop. Were it a very, very expensive one, then I would probably take that a little bit more seriously, that the Ida damage perhaps could or should have been around Walgrove. But we do have some Ida damage at Walgrove, and I think that because of the angle of this grant and the grant they offered before, it's well worth quoting all the Ida damage across the village.
Thank you.
Just to clarify for the record, Anthony, so the 2.4, so you're saying, so you're adding the engineering and the original 2.4, so that's engineering plus plus the construction, but that doesn't, is that all of the design and everything else in the engineering, or is there an additional design phase on top of that also?
No, I think we could absorb the the green infrastructure part of that into that fee, that estimated fee, and that's also the bringing it through construction with inspection and construction administration. It'd be kind of the same rough number there, I think. So I would leave that and just add that cost. I do want to look at that green infrastructure cost a little. That's literally hot off the presses, so to speak. I just want to. It may be a bit conservative, maybe we could streamline that a little bit, but maybe we can get that cost down.
And that work is actually on Masters property, correct?
Yes, it's on Masters. Mhm.
And so,
As the last was, because we had an easement that we needed to allow to get the other infrastructure in place, right?
Yeah, the head wall and the stream stabilization part, the first 100 feet was all on Masters, and
Yeah.
new easement bounds are being drawn up for that as we speak.
yes. Right, so the goal is to be, I mean, I think the main question here regarding the scope was, it's highlighting also like what this entails and what it doesn't entail, like it does not entail sidewalks, it just, like, what does it not entail that we should be aware of that, that's it. What does it not entail that we should be aware of?
Yeah, we had added in the sidewalks and curbing. There's a little curbing in this for some of the drainage work, but we had added in all those sidewalks, and it was also along Bellwood and some paving along Bellwood. That was for another
That was for a
grant,
transportation.
act grant.
Where you're
Yeah.
trying to get the grants, and it's like, these things are all related, right? Like the drainage issues are related to the fact that it causes trouble with transportation in that area, and and this is a green related one. So how can you craft it so that people are supporting this effort and we don't have to pay 100% of just simply the drains that are the core of the issue?
So does this include all of the curb to curb repaving or not even? Yeah,
No, it does that,
It does.
right?
Yeah,
It has-
we included, basically resurfacing. We would restore the trench and then resurface, mill and resurface the roadway like we would for any paving project, which has been being put off for years because of the drainage problems
And-
underneath.
So if we wanted to do sidewalks on Walgrove, particularly on the most damaged kind of Children's Village down to Springhurst, because.
Well, this doesn't go past there. Like, how far up does this go?
Stop sign. That's what
Right, so that sidewalk just got done.
That sidewalk, but I'm saying upper.
there isn't one, but you're
Right.
saying adding
Well,
one.
we sort of went down this rabbit hole for this other grant of thinking about, how in terms of other related village goals around increasing non-vehicular transportation, particularly in these kind of institutional areas where you have a lot of people coming and going. And we were thinking about pedestrian safety and things like that. So I don't know if it's just like, if this all gets cut off there, then we just address that at another time, but I guess it was sort of an open question for Fiona, is there some way to then dovetail this into like addressing some of the other issues that we've also identified in the same corridor while we're ripping up the street?
So from a grant perspective, it's very hard to get drainage, paving, and sidewalks. It might even be close to impossible to get all of those in one grant, and at least the grants that I'm familiar with that are out at the moment. The nice part about grants is that layering them works really, really well, particularly now that Dobbs Ferry has been fortunate enough to get a New York Forward grant, which prejudices grant makers in favor of Dobbs Ferry a little bit. But in general, I find that if say in a case like this where there are three great needs, right? Drainage, repaving, sidewalks. If a grant is obtained to address the underlying need, the need that has to be addressed first, drainage, then it appears to be a little bit simpler to get a grant than to do the next need. Money follows money is the way the grants seem to work. So my thought on that is that layering different grants is a good idea. So to address the drainage, because then we can go forward with the others, and then address the sidewalks in a different grant round. We kind of tried to do all three with that Department of Transportation preview that we submitted. And you'll remember that their comments came back and they eliminated the roadway repaving.
Yeah.
It's just kind of tough to get all three of those things because they address different priorities of the state.
I mean, it's not the same as a sidewalk, but the green infrastructure component of this does have a trailway.
Right.
That trailway could be extended further to connect to the road that joins the road that goes at Children's Village. And, you know, it wouldn't be fully accessible, but it would be good for a lot of people who are on foot and or on bicycle or
And
whatever.
that also meets like Parkland's. Like
It'd be a nicer walk than
That we
other walks.
also identified.
So, you know, maybe there's a component of that already included here.
And I think one of the questions was around, you know, is it a 10-year flood? Is it a 25-year, 100-year, that concept, because it changes the total. And checking in that 10-year is sufficient with the board and you don't feel strongly about it being 25. What I am curious about is how, if you do that work on the master's property, does that help make the 10-year more use, like, is that helping to reduce some of the flow that goes into the 10-year because now there's more happening on the right and it's not going in, or?
No, not really. It's more about the erosion problem
Okay.
back there and what that causes in the system and the maintenance and so forth. It's not. There's no component there to
Long-term. It's not about
stormwater.
it's not about the capacity, but it's about the long-term viability. I'm just curious, you know, I feel like it can't just be there for no reason or like because they require green infrastructure. Ideally, it has a reason and it supports the entire project.
Yeah.
So I just want to
No,
highlight.
definitely, it supports the project in that, you know, you can't have that kind of erosion running into your drain system. You don't want that. And I know that's been a long-standing problem back there, that erosion problem.
Yeah.
The only other thing in the future that could be looked at, we talked about the pond here up for Springhurst. This is for the condominiums across the street. They lease this land from Masters. They've been asked to look at it to confirm that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. It was kind of all overgrown, needed repairs to the outfall, which they're looking at. They removed some vegetation. There could be an opportunity. There's a slim chance maybe that maybe there could be some additional capacity here, but it might not do a lot for the whole system. That's something we could look at in the future, working with Springhurst, if you like. That could have some better effect, and that would just increase the whole, you know, capacity of the whole kind of watershed, the whole system. But it would be a small amount, it really would. But that's the only thing I can really see here as helping.
And
Otherwise,
remind
you
us,
just, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
what, so we don't have 100% confirmation of what the sort of storm year size of the crossing at Broadway is that correct? Anthony, are we
No,
doing this?
we do. It's about a 10-year storm. Little better than a 10-year storm now.
Okay,
Mhm.
so I think what you described to us when we were talking about this, just so everyone's on the same page, is if we create infrastructure up here for like a 25 or 100-year storm and it all goes into a 10-year storm anyway, then we're
You-
just, we're
You'd
kind
have
of.
to rebuild, yeah, you'd have to rebuild that crossing at Broadway with that wall and State Road, and that's like major.
Yeah, and what would you say, do we have I know there's a lot of problems with it, but what is it? Is it now what is like the current capacity of this system such as it tries to function?
2 years.
It's limited by like your worst sections on this run, which is about a 2-year storm.
Okay.
And we ran into issues trying to get the Department of Transportation to pay some attention to the infrastructure at Seneca, when we were trying to fix that aqueduct that goes through there. So, they routinely do upkeep on their culverts, but there's nothing in the pipeline that we found that they were looking to increase the size of any of the culverts.
Yeah,
'Cause, you know,
they wouldn't just volunteer to do that. That would have to be a village project, but it would come under their control.
If I may, one of the things that will, I'm sorry.
Okay,
One of
I'm
the
sorry, Matt.
things that is part of the Route 9 redesign is if that goes forward and they are going to be tearing up Broadway anyway, it is my understanding that it is on the DOT agenda to address stormwater issues that are currently covered by Broadway. So if that project moves forward, there is an opportunity to work with the state to increase the capacity of that stormwater system under Broadway.
Matt, I don't think when they say that they're going to deal with stormwater, that means like adding catch basins, doing things
No,
like that.
they specifically talked about dealing with the piping that's under Broadway, and they talked about it for the full length of the corridor, not merely Dobbs Ferry.
I mean, with respect, this would be a major culvert for them to build here. This would be like a project on its own.
All right.
This wouldn't be part of like some corridor type work, because I mean you've got, I'm not sure how tall the wall is here, but you've got like a retaining wall here holding back Broadway as well. So this is like a major structure here. I don't know that would be included as, add-in work on like, just roadway work.
But it's worth a flag aligning those, if it's the state's road that this is leading to and it's a state pipe, and then we're doing all of this work that leads into it, just making sure that we're aligned on whatever they're planning and whatever we're planning is not like, if they have any inclination of doing some 25-year upgrade there, we should be just, checking in with them.
The other thing you may want to look into is there's some weird rules as far as what they view as their responsibility and what they view as a municipality's responsibility, like when it was built and so forth, what it's serving. This is clearly bringing the water from, the southern areas, as also Broadway water as well. But, so I'd be surprised if this was getting replaced as part of that.
All right, we have to move on, but does anybody else have any other questions, or are we okay with where this is going? It's just making sure there's questions to ask and making sure we all have input here. Cool.
Felt like I was reading someone's like medical history when I was going through this.
Like looking at heart valves and stuff. All right, on to another fun long document. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Fiona.
Technical report, yeah.
So should we, I'm sorry, I just have one quick, should we include that green infrastructure in the feasibility study and go on with that grant application? Yes?
But check the numbers so that it can be not
Yeah.
as much.
We will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right, number 2, Ashford Avenue corridor study results. So this, oh, Matt's better at this. Matt, can you give a little preview as to why this study happened, and what we're looking at?
Sure. The initial impetus for the study was when the stoplight at Washington and Ashford broke down, and we had a four-way stop there for a while, and there were some suggestions both from the public and from former member of the board that that might be a better long-term solution as a four-way stop than as a signalized intersection. And as we talked about the need to do a study for that, we also talked about looking at the entirety of the Ashford Avenue corridor, which at certain times of day is the bane of the existence of any driver who is unlucky enough to be on it at the time. So a sort of a broad study was conceived to sort of encompass all or most of the problems of the Ashford Avenue corridor. The study that we have before us, which the folks from Nelson Pope who are on the Zoom can probably summarize better than I can. I will just briefly editorialize and say that the biggest issue that they found was that the roadway has a certain amount of capacity, call it a 2-year storm's worth of capacity. And the traffic has become such that every peak hour is a 10-year storm. We have a roadway that is at capacity. So it seems to me that while there are recommendations that can make marginal improvements in the flow of traffic, that the improvements are marginal unless the traffic volume is reduced. And by marginal, I mean a minute here across the roadway or a minute there. It's not significant, while it is also in the aggregate, the recommendations are quite expensive and come at some cost to pedestrian safety, in my view, and I think in the traffic committee's view as well. So I'll leave it at that and let the folks from Nelson Pope speak to the findings.
I also want to welcome Rob Farren. If you want to come and sit with us just as we listen to them, and if we have questions for you, we can direct them to you. All right.
For those who don't know, Rob is the chair of the traffic committee.
So Russ and Joe, please, just a brief, we don't have time to like go through the whole report here, and in theory, we've all read it. But I think we just want to leave understanding the key takeaways from the study, like what Matt said, is that the case? Or are there things that you found that would have been slam dunk solutions, or is that just generally not possible because there's just too many cars?
Yeah, so Matt really nailed it. The brief synopsis that he gave really is kind of what's going on down there. That road is at capacity. The focus area that we have, obviously, at during peak hours is really just seeing a lot of volume. Some of the recommendations and things that we looked at will definitely improve maybe some safety and whatnot, but our heavy focus on the vehicular efficiency is kind of peaked. As part of our recommendations, I would say there is maybe one more or less slam dunk, if you want to call it that, at Washington Avenue. So the eastbound traffic, and I can share my screen just to give you a quick idea. Let's see, does everybody see that?
Yep.
So project limits, right? Beacon Hill, Ogden Avenue, the central signalized location for this particular part of the study is Washington Avenue. If we kind of zoom into that location, we have an eastbound left turn, leading left turn phase that comes up with every single signal cycle that was operating under the conditions when we were out there doing observations. That leading left really only accounts for a very small portion of the traffic that's actually turning left. During those peak hours, it's really only getting about 5% of the vehicles that are turning left there. So that amount of time that's being dedicated for that lefts can be taken and given to the westbound to at least give a small or maybe not so small actually, improvement to the through movement that's coming through this particular intersection during that peak interval. And that's without any other real changes, just getting rid of that leading left. It does require a little bit of work. There's a separate signal head that's up on the signal span that would need to be removed. There's some programming changes that need to be done in the cabinet. But I would say out of all of the recommendations that are on a list, that's probably the most notable.
Joe, if I can ask you a quick question
Sure.
about that. If you take away that left turn signal priority period and have traffic flowing in both directions at once, do you also need to make it a no left turn from Ashford onto Washington? Because otherwise, in a one-lane road, wouldn't that back up traffic eastbound for anybody who's like waiting to slip in to make a left turn?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, to your point, that would be great. I don't know if that's a solution, but if that is something that the village would be willing to entertain, I think that's a great idea. Back just to the volume of that, I mean, like I said, it's only getting about 5% of the vehicles that are going through that eastbound movement, at least during the peak hours, that are making that left turn. So regardless of them holding up traffic for the through movement, right? Ideally, that leading left turn phase, if it comes up for, let's say, 10 seconds, you have to have a car within that first couple of cycles to have somebody making the left. If they come up after that 10 seconds, you're back into this, existing and opposite through traffic from the westbound anyway. So to your point, yes, if the first few cars are stacked in the beginning, they will go more freely to make that left turn without any competition. But if they're towards the end of that signal cycle, they're going to be in the same, conundrum that you'd be in if we were to make this change, let's say.
Joe, why not just extend the duration of the green light east and west?
We could, and that's kind of part of the suggestion. If we were to take away that leading left turn, right? So here, maybe I could pull it up just to make sure that anybody who's not familiar with some of the traffic sequencing. So it's a little hard to see here, but this left turn signal is basically coming up, regardless of anybody here making a left, is coming up and, for lack of a better term, stealing time from the westbound movement, which is what the cars that we're looking at here. So when this interval comes up, they automatically get a left, regardless of anybody making a left turn here going eastbound. So if we were to steal those few seconds from this left turn and just give that additional time to the eastbound movement, you would improve the flow from that eastbound section of the corridor. There are other issues still further downstream as you approach, what is that, Route 9 to the west there. So there are other things that will still cause some backup, but it'll at least give some relief to this intersection potentially, especially for all the queuing that you can actually see from Street View here.
Is it
possible? So there is
to,
a benefit there. Go on, Matt.
Is it possible to just disable that light for a brief period and call it
Sure,
an
as a test?
experiment and see what the results are?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that signal, it's operating under its own leading interval. So technically, if they either change the programming or just disconnect the wire, they would have to change the timing for the eastbound approach, but it's something that should easily be accomplished from a signal contractor perspective.
And you program the left turn signal just for those peak hours, and then otherwise
That's when it's not needed.
it's not
Yeah.
needed.
The issues with the you start to get into much more advanced equipment that would be required at the signal. So you'd start to get into higher costs. Ideally that would be the best option. But the other problem that we have here though is just the lane designation, right? It's still a single lane. So the only way that left turn signal would be able to come up is in the beginning or at the end of a cycle for the eastbound approach. So if there was a detection of a car turning left, great, but in this case, it's not really going to be able to differentiate because, it's a single lane. That car could be going right, through, left. The detection equipment is not going to know, to that advanced level to be able to change on a dime to say, hey, you know what, hold up traffic, we got to make a left here. That would be some really extensive equipment that you'd need at the intersection. So, and
Yes, please.
potentially a lane, reconfiguration for this.
Yeah, I think what Mike was asking, that was also my question, can we just, and what, if we tweak it so that we temporarily disable the left preferential turn, can we also test out just having the Ashford, like reducing the amount of time dedicated to the side streets on the entire corridor, including this intersection, because we know that the main problems are the Ashford throughput itself and not and like sort of emphasizing getting people through Ashford rather than the turning onto or off of Ashford onto all those side streets. Can we
Right.
test that at the same time?
There's really
Potentially,
not a lot of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
you potentially could do that, but every adjustment that you make to one intersection is going to affect the other intersections. So it really would have to be kind of, I'll call it like corridor wide, some of these improvements made, not just on one intersection. To decrease just the left turn that we're talking about here, different story. You can give that available time, whatever it was, 8 seconds, 10 seconds from that left turn automatically to the westbound and not affect anybody else further west or east. But if we
How many
start,
cars get through in 8 seconds from a stop?
I think from a stop is what, for a passenger vehicle is like 3.5 second reaction speed. Through the
So you're buying
intersection, you're
two
probably
cars.
looking at like 7 seconds maybe total, right? Because you have 3 seconds to start up. The intersections, call it 100 feet. Yeah, so you're looking at probably about 7 seconds for the first car to pass through.
You gotta finish your text though.
So what I want to make sure that we get through in this discussion is highlighting the places where we'd want to further explore doing
Sure.
another action. So
Sure.
like, if, this one noted that it's worth further, deciding as a board if we want to do another thing here. But
Okay.
what would be other
So
places?
let's move on to a few other just highlights. Young Street, not signalized, very small amount of traffic that comes out of there. It's just a couple of residential homes and I'll call it a back street, if you will. There's no control there. There really should be a stop control at that intersection. It's an unsafe condition. There are
Can you
9 accidents. Sure. So
Young Street is right across from the new construction.
yes. So this is Young Street here. So you have Washington here, Ogden Place, then the offset intersection of Ogden Avenue and Leffergy. This here is Young Street. It's really only servicing, it looks like, right, the homes that are coming from here and here, and potentially this parking lot, I think, has through access here. So this particular intersection is an uncontrolled side street, really should have a stop control. In addition, depending on, again, I'm not sure if you'd get any negative feedback from the public, depending on who uses the street, but to restrict left turns. Stop sign with rights only would be the ideal scenario for this location. I think we had, somewhere on my sheet, we had maybe 9 accidents and it took up, what do we got here? Young Street. Yeah, 9 accidents is about 15% of the 5-year crash history that we looked at for this intersection. So not really, again, something to I think fix at least a safety condition.
No place for one. It's a funny condition there. But yeah,
it is.
that's a good point.
But it's a T intersection.
Yeah, there has to be.
T intersection. Yep. Yeah. So the stop control would just be for the side street, nothing to do with Ashford. Just a small safety improvement, not really something that would necessarily affect the Ashford corridor outside of potentially a safety and a crash history.
When you say there's no stop control, there is a stop sign on as you leave Young Street onto Ashford.
At least not when we were out there. And I
Really?
probably
There
can
used
pull
to
up
be
some
one.
photos, but let's see. I don't know if Street View is gonna. Yeah, actually, hold on. I think this shows a similar. Maybe it's just buried somewhere up here. I don't see it on this one either, though.
Oh, yeah.
It's not really the greatest footage.
There used to be.
But this is the side street that we're talking about. So ideally, there should be some sort of stop control. And the photographs that we have showed nothing up further as well. So. So again, a safety issue, something that should be addressed, but not necessarily going to improve the Ashford corridor. To go back to the Ashford corridor, we can look at Beacon Hill, which we'll pull back up this. So Beacon Hill, right across from the park here, has a ped phase for the, the pedestrians that are accessing the park, I'm sure going to school and stuff to the west. This particular ped phase is coming up with every single cycle. It's on what they call ped recall. So anytime that signal for the northbound on Beacon Hill comes up as a green, they're also getting, or prior to, I guess, they're getting an exclusive pedestrian phase here. I'm assuming maybe, well, it could be two things. It could be that this was implemented because of how much park use they get here. They felt that pedestrians should always have access without pushing the push buttons, or the alternate is there's an equipment issue. It's not really something that we can identify without having an electrician or a contractor out there to assist. But if this, for some reason, one of the push buttons is broken, or a ped head is broken, or something is not operating correctly or wired correctly, it will go into ped recall typically, or maybe a contractor that put it into ped recall to basically have this come up without the need of pushing a push button. Something that should be addressed. It's adding a delay to the main line for no reason. Something that, again, I'll call it a slam
So
dunk, if
the
you will.
solution there would be make the push button work.
Yeah, make the push button work only upon actuation, right? So that if there's a pedestrian that comes there, they push the button, they get that in the next cycle, a ped phase for them to cross safely. But outside of that, if there's no peds, it really shouldn't be coming up, and that's currently how it's operating.
What's the timing on that? How long does it last?
It's typically at a minimum 7 seconds, and I think that's what this is set to, but it is also based on the distance of the crossing. So it could be upwards of 15. I honestly don't have it written down offhand, but
Gotcha.
so that's for Beacon Hill. I think that's an easy upgrade, again, without really requiring, much equipment or any, super crazy mitigation, if you will. Okay, so we talked about Washington, Beacon Hill, Young Street. So Leffergy at Ogden, again, just kind of a more, I guess, extensive proposal or recommendation. So maybe not as much of a slam dunk, but we talked about separating some of the lane configuration here, putting in a right turn for this offset intersection. It'll basically just operate a little bit more efficiently than it does right now. We put in, let's see, for the right turn lane there, we have roughly 18% of the traffic volume that's being processed through this intersection is making a right turn. I know we had previously discussed about this potentially being a cut through. That could, definitely be what's going on. It's kind of outside of our scope here. But we did notice that a lot of the traffic was using that. Just by adding some of these small lane designations and taking the right turning vehicles or anything that's slowing down processing through movements. I mean, we had a reduction in delay of almost 75%. That does include other things too, though, our timing adjustments and, some of our other equipment upgrades that we had recommendations for. So, when I say like a reduction delay of 75%, that is incorporating kind of all of the proposed recommendations for this
That
intersection.
also, there's a note on here that requires losing about 5 feet of sidewalk. Is that correct?
Not for this one, I don't believe. The loss of sidewalk is at the Washington.
Well, there's
location.
a note right on top of
I
where
apologize.
you just were.
It's document CP4.
Oh, yes, you are correct. So
Yes.
this here just has to do with turning movements. So, we ran auto turn to basically just see how efficiently some of these vehicles are turning into the side streets. I mean, technically speaking, they're doing it now, but based on our movements, we're trying to say the safest maneuver would require some taking of this corner property here. The real life condition, some of these buses or larger vehicles, trailers, whatever you want to say, are coming to a complete stop, having a full turn. So it is slowing down the through traffic, but they might be navigating this turn more successfully than we're showing it here. This is more of like a conservative approach to say, hey, in an ideal situation, this bus really shouldn't have to come to a complete stop. They're trying to make this turn without crossing the double yellow, et cetera, et cetera. So real life conditions, they're still able to make this turn, just not as efficient as we'd like. So, but in terms of our lane designation here, it is squeezed in, but we are squeezing this within the existing conditions to not affect sidewalk or properties or what have you on this particular section of road.
I don't understand how
So-
that diagram doesn't work. You're showing the turning radius cutting into a large section of the sidewalk. There's that's someone's property line with a fence on it. So you no longer have
It's right away.
That's optimal.
What's that?
It's right away. Yeah, you
Yes.
don't own up to the property. I mean,
No, I'm not talking about that. Look at where the turning radius is in relationship to the corner of the property.
Right, but that's that's village right away. So
I know, but
you
it's
could do it.
reduction of a sidewalk to what looks like 2 feet in width.
Correct. That's.
So,
Yeah, again, like I said, this is kind of a conservative approach with this auto turn movement, but to your point, yes.
Worst case scenario.
So,
All
yeah,
right.
Joe is showing a
I mean,
worst case scenario.
But I have to. So what I think we need to do from here, I mean, this was to give us a moment to make sure that we read this document, get an overview from them. But what I'd like to do is ask the traffic committee to take it from here and then suggest to us what we should look at in priority.
Sure.
And then circle back at what that would be, figure out what those first things would be that we would try and do, and let
Understood.
them do that. Looking at that and seeing what's not great ideas and what could be better.
so how did this happen, like with us? Like, are we gonna look at individual? Are we gonna discuss some of these in more detail, like?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, the traffic committee looks at what these suggestions are and then prioritizes what we should look at in closer detail so that we can make decisions as to what we would be spending money on.
It's just like, we're gonna have a more in-depth discussion about like a few
Yeah.
select.
Right,
items, really.
because there's just a bunch of them.
I have just like.
Yeah.
Some just overview. I mean, like, so I thought this was a very nice report. So I think some of the drawings would, like, were very sort of duplicative of Fiona's grant for the complete streets that we did, that we didn't get this round, but hopefully we'll get next round. I think the big takeaways are like, we need better signals. You know, just like more, you know, like they sort of talked about that a little bit, we really need to do that. We
Like, they just
smarter,
work dialed in, or they need to be.
smarter, more responsive to what
More
is going on,
expensive.
and, yeah.
That wasn't even looked at.
Yeah, I mean, not really, because they weren't asked to
Right,
really.
no,
look
no,
at
I'm
it.
just
Yeah.
saying, that's not really.
Yeah.
There are
and I think-
comments in this report about that.
Yeah, I think so.
There's generally a
Yeah.
suggestion that it wouldn't be useful. I
I'm
mean,
not,
at least that's how I read the.
yes,
that one
I'm not so sure about that, but I think.
I agree
yeah,
with you. I'm
yeah.
just saying that the report says something different than.
Right,
Yeah, so
yes.
we can add to that. The section that you're referring to is some of the adaptive and smart technology with respect to detection. It's not saying that it's necessarily a bad option. There's always improvements. The difference is really just the cost benefit, right? So based on the fact that the corridor is already at capacity, there's really only so much room for improvement. So it would be a shame to go out and spend, you know, I'm just throwing out a number out there, you know, $2-3 million to upgrade your signals. And then you're like, wait, we only really got an improvement of, 30 seconds of delay or something. And meanwhile, the technology is doing its best, to kind of give you the best case scenario. It's not to say that
Right,
it won't be, it's just that the
I-
cost benefit ratio might not be.
I agree, and I think, but the cost benefit on some of the infrastructure changes are also significant, so.
Sure,
But
agreed.
I wanted, like, your last paragraph I thought was really good, in that the scope of this was to look at like engineering.
Mhm.
Which I think is sort of a myopic way of scoping it. I think what we really need to be doing is looking at, we're trying to figure out ways to reduce demand. Why are so many people driving on this?
Right, right.
And then the last thing is that the suggestions to remove right turn on red. In places, we have a lot of kids, a lot of seniors, they don't make the best decisions. Putting them at the same time for a walk signal and having a car moving into them. We find very concerning.
Mhm.
That's it, sorry.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, we could just touch upon that
It's
very
okay.
quickly.
We really have to move on. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Sure, okay.
So
Thank you.
that would be, if everybody's cool, that would be my ask is
We'll
to,
put that.
because there are things that are engineering things that I do think could just be simple things that we've taken and move forward with, like the left-hand turn thing. We already are always thinking now about multimodal and how if you just have fewer cars, that's a different line of solution, which I think we're all aligned on trying to do that. So agreed on all that. But I would like to leave it now with you. We've all seen it. We've seen the overview. If you can help us prioritize, that would be ideal.
We can do it.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me sit at the big chair.
Alright. I'm gonna go
Thanks,
straight to
everyone.
4 and we're gonna talk about youth services code because you guys are here and we can do the human rights discussion during our regular meeting. Do you want to come up here? We have Lisa and Justin here from the Youth Services Council. The main thing, so the code, the Youth Services Council is defined. Sorry, Dave, you want to introduce?
No, we all know each other. I just said hi.
All right. Now I'm in our 5-minute mode. Youth Services Council has code that was first adopted in 1975 and then edited in 2015. And so we're just taking a look at what's written there to see if we can streamline any of it to make it simpler and just kind of level set on what we're expecting this group to do on behalf of the board. We appoint them. They work at the pleasure of the Board of Trustees, so we want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And generally, I've been having conversations with them and Nitin, and I want everybody here to have a say in what we're talking about here. So we have in the background or in the backup, the existing code, and then a streamlined purpose and function membership. I think the key distinctions here is and I don't mean to speak for you, so if I am and I'm not correct, please correct me. But like the idea is that there's a lot of different ways that the youth want to be involved in the village. And they range from, you know, kids who want to do things in government and really like learn more about like this kind of stuff. And then there's trying to help meet kids where they're at and like give them things to do so that they're not, you know, getting into trouble and fighting different paths. And we want to help support those kind of efforts. We want to make better connections with all the entities that do all the things with the kids, from our schools to masters to everywhere else we could potentially meet them. And we want to help like guide future leaders in all these different ways. So like there's a lot of different ways you can do it. And I think they've seen that there's a benefit in having sort of like little task forces of different types that can help and meet them in those different ways. And so that's part of what, like the previous version kind of listed them out more individually. And like, you know, there was working with the rec and working with the schools and the special projects, track and field. I know there are specific things in the old one that are more generalized here. And then the adults would be, you know, helping to coordinate this whole effort. We would want, the numbers are, there's I put 5 adults and 3 youths. It's up for debate if that seems like too much or too little. There would be the ex officio members so that we always have a village trustee and we always have someone from the school district to speak to that, and someone from PD, youth officer, someone from rec, so that there's more alignment in all the efforts. And all of this would be funded by the general fund, like the village pays, you know, this, any efforts that we do that require funding would have to be something that we are, you know, making happen, just like we do any event, anything from rec. Because previously there was a, you know, the Youth Services Coalition, which is a separate thing that had a grant, and that wasn't the Youth Services Council, and so we don't have that now, so this would be, it always existed, but the other thing had funding, and this is just us that has our funding, which is us, so. What else is there?
And I could just say,
Yeah.
both groups had different intentions and different goals. Council had a different goal than the coalition.
Right.
So I want to make sure that's clear. What did you want to ask? I'm sorry.
Oh, I think we're.
And then the question is, as expenses get requested, if there was, today I sent you guys something, what's the process? What would be the
So
process?
we have to, we're working on a policy for that for all the boards and committees, because it's not just you, there's other ones that are doing that. You know,
Expense policies.
yes, well, we have an expense policy, but we also need a process for how volunteers who serve at our behest, at our appointment, have a request for how to spend general funds and how we
Evaluate.
process that through the staff and evaluate. So that we have to figure out the process for that, but that's on our list for the summer.
Yeah, because Jeff will need to understand
Yeah.
like reimbursement and it can't be just a donation of a flat number. It really has to be related to goods and services.
And we
right?
should be buying it the village should be buying it and supplying it to you or
Yeah,
whatever,
the
like
ta-
that.
take
because we have
advantage of the
procurement
tax exemption.
So,
And how does this, because I know the high school has a strong youth committee, for want of a better word. How does this then dovetail with that? Are members of that group also on this group? Is
No.
that,
And the high school has, I'm sorry,
no, go.
the high school has a group. I don't know if I would say it's strong. It has gotten a lot stronger over the last several years. We have a new student assistant counselor who's been working at the school for about 3 years, I think.
Sure.
And she's made a very material change in the student body. Before her, it was a little bit more difficulty and more of a challenge to get the kids involved. She now has a meaningful group in the high school and getting some traction in the middle school as well. She is, as you know, funded now, I think a salary is 100% paid by the school district, where she was partially paid for and underwritten from the coalition.
And so the goal would be that we have somebody from the school district representing what they're doing, so that, whatever we're doing is complementary or, takes into all of that into account.
And she's been there for 3 years, but that position's been there for over like a decade for like.
it was
12 years.
paid out of the grant funding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In part, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm just in kind of reacting to this here, and you probably have to table or continue this conversation in the next meeting, but it would be, I think, really fantastic to have in here as the YSC is going through this evolution coming off of that grant. And
I'm sorry, the YSC never had the grant.
the
The
coalition,
coalition.
the Youth Services Coalition, which is also the YSC.
But we're rolling them together now.
Right.
No, there's no more coalition. The coalition is
But
now.
the role and function of the coalition is now being rolled.
Generically speaking, the
Yeah.
efforts that the village makes around youth, it would be great to be really clear in rebooting or however we're rehabilitating or whatever the right word is for this effort, to understand how this is greater than the sum of its parts. We do have the school has this strong this counselor who's been doing a great job and making a lot of inroads. We have a strong recreation department with amazing programming. We have a youth services officer role within the police department, just to get really granular about why this additional body is able to either bring these together in a way that's not possible just by kind of having all those entities get together, or is there an additional function that's simply impossible within the confines of the existing entities? I think that's what I'm kind of still a little not totally clear on from this.
So I think that the intent of having a youth committee of any sort through the village is to make sure that we're getting input so that everything that we're doing in the village is doing what is addressing their experience of living in the village. So like we would have this group of people that pull from all of those groups to help advise like what rec is producing, like what that would be the goal. And then if we're hearing anything, we would also have somebody from the school to be like, we see this is missing. Is that something you could provide? It's the group of people that can help guide those decisions. It's not the group of people who's making those things happen, like the activities, because that's the rec.
We also have the rec commission, and should we, I'm just as a hypothetical, should there be a youth member or a youth subcommittee of the rec commission as opposed to yet another? So I just think like really understanding that why is probably worth another, and maybe you all flesh this out in more detail elsewhere, but.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to wherever this was like a group from the Board of Trustees 50 years ago. So whatever that was and that need in 1976 is probably a different need in 2026. So and just like 10 years ago, there was a different need where there was a big epidemic with drugs and pills and stuff like that. So that's where we fell into that grant. And we got that grant because there was a need in this village. So now I don't think that need went away after we lost the grant, but it's also something that is whatever the need of the village is, right? So that's kind of in this youth service council that was formed 50 years ago, whatever they were coming about to make sure kids were on the right path. And I said, we've been doing stuff the last decade, from like the holiday hustle to like trips to partnering with the rec, because the rec could do a lot of good things, but not always is like, it's a rec, the rec thing where we did stuff during like spring break or February break where kids weren't going away. And there was like a need because parents were working. So like rec's not gonna have a camp, but we're gonna try to figure out things to do for those kids. So,
But we also have
Yeah.
spring now. with
Right, yeah.
people.
right, of course. And there's, like I said, there's so many good things that we're doing. So it's like, we're on this board because the trustees came up with this.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? We didn't just
yeah.
like make this up out of thin air.
No,
So,
for sure, for sure.
I don't know,
Well,
I
now
don't know
you
where
got-
it's going.
Now you're
I
gonna
just
make
wanna
it
take the
better.
opportunity
Right,
to add more to it.
Yeah,
Since we.
So you'd like to, we can relook at what this says and not vote on it tonight. I mean, we're not voting on it tonight anyway.
No, it has to be a local law.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to revise
Yeah,
the
but
code.
I'm still not clear what you're asking for. Are you asking for like a true mission statement, or you're asking
We're not
for
understanding
a?
that This entity is needed in 2026 if we now have as I said, a very different dynamic. We have a lot more different
Okay,
kinds of.
yeah, so-
resources. Understand
mission
what is
statement,
the
yeah.
unmet need
Right.
that is in the gaps between the high school of all other educational entities that service this demographic, the rec commission, the rec department, and, police department. Like, if there are gaps, then that feels like where this thing should.
I guess the only way I can respond to that is I think there needs to be some type of conduit. There needs to be some
Well,
type of
that's-
right.
coalition.
I mean, I
I don't wanna
can-
use the word coalition again, but it has to be coalesced in a way that we're kind of tapping into all these different peripheral groups that need to be pulled together.
Yeah, cause
and
it's kind of
leveraged
like,
in a
we
different way.
want sustainability to be in every single thing we do. We want kids and teens to be thought of in everything that we're doing. But we still have a group of people that are tasked with like highlighting how we do that, right?
So then, does it need to be a
Yes.
provision in the code as opposed to
Oh,
like?
does- I don't know why it's in the code, but
I'm
it's
just
still in
saying,
the
like.
code. Does it need to be in the code?
No,
You don't need to know, if it should be a committee,
Right.
like sustainability, that always is wearing the lens of how are we making sure that youth are engaged, that youth are, having opportunities that they're not getting in these other places, or that their voices are being heard in rooms where they have historically been heard. And it's a committee, just like sustainability is a committee, and I think that's also a different thing than a code-based.
But it's also like traffic. I mean, I guess it's just how permanent you're
Traffic
trying to make it.
Traffic committee is also,
No, traffic isn't.
that's a, anyway.
And there's-
But
there's-
no,
We
that,
talked
the
about this when
concept
we
of,
were Originally.
And our neighboring communities do have this, I mean, Hastings, Irvington,
Yeah.
there's the villages look very similar, has a very similar dynamic
Mhm.
with the Youth Services Council. So I've been doing a lot of kind of poking
but if
around.
we did it, like, if it wasn't in the code, it would be more flexible. Like the mission statement could just change with the board of trustees and the committee.
And then
when it's
where
in
would
the
it,
code.
where would it sit? It would sit in the
It
rec.
just sits on like, at our annual meeting and on the website and it's,
As a.
Yeah, really would go through the rec department.
Prescriptive,
Mhm.
right.
prescriptive in terms of what you're.
How many
what your
people can
remit
be
is.
on it and
Mhm.
how, like the library board, because as a budget and all the things that it does has a whole, code
And I
section.
don't wanna like open up a can of worms, but the only thing I put out to you is how we deal with adults who are interacting with children as well. Like I think there needs to be something in place that we have adults who are vetted, we have adults who are, we got into that many years ago where we didn't have that. And I think we need to have something in today's day and age that kind of vets adults in a structured way
Yeah.
or some type of.
That's true.
yeah, and the other thing you could do is you can indicate that you'd like a certain number of youth from each of the educational institutions with, like masters can. Usually this kind of thing on the board I sit on in higher ed, at the university, is the student representatives are on the student government board. So there's a direct connection to their
It's like an
relationship.
ex officio version.
Right, it's like
Students.
that, yeah.
Mhm.
So you were saying 3 youths, but maybe you want to name them, like you want the school to nominate from among their
Well,
schools.
the only thing that my experience doing this work with the youth group is, number one, you're lucky who shows up, you know, the youth, you know, I'd love to say 3 from each school, but you're not gonna get 3. You know, I remember the days where we had 15 showing up at meetings, that was great. But I don't know, and I don't know if you want people nominated, because one of the beauties of this type of group is an open door, where children and youth feel welcome and feel welcomed on any given day, but not maybe every Wednesday. You know, you're lucky to have what you get and to give support to these youth, and not all of those youths are showing up in student government. Some of them are showing up in other things. So some of the events kind of attract them in different ways.
Yeah, and the Youth Services Council would be creating the opportunity for people to come and participate.
Very good. Like it.
All right, so we'll take all of those. I'm gonna rewatch this later, so I can remember what everyone said into consideration, and then we'll reconnect and see
Thank
what
you.
we should change, if it could be code or not code, what the benefits would be of keeping it in the code versus
Mhm.
not. And yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. All right, is there a motion to close this? And we'll take the item number 3 and discuss before we do our resolutions at the regular meeting. Trustee Rothman.